and welcome to episode 4 in my Creative Conversation series. This week I talked to Emma from Steel and Stitch. Emma is an amazing crochet designer with no fewer than 3 published books. She's worked with every crochet magazine going and has also worked with some amazing yarn companies. I really wanted to pick Emma's brains about her creative process. We talked a lot about where she gets her inspiration from, how she makes swatch cards from nature, and she also shared a load of tips on how to get into publishing, whether it's books or magazines, if you are a crochet designer or have some patterns that you would like to put forward. We finished off by talking about her masters, which is in sustainable design, and how she wants to build a community online, really just for a place for people to share what they're making and what they're doing without having any ads or messages rammed down their throat, which I wholeheartedly am on board with. As ever, this is a video that was recorded from Instagram Live, so the sound and picture quality may be not quite what you're used to from my videos, but I think there are some really interesting takeaways if you stick with us and fancy a watch. Thanks. Please feel free to leave us any questions in the comments, and either Emma or myself will try and get back to you on here or on Instagram. See you soon. Hi!
Yay!
Oh yay, we did it!
I don't think anybody's expecting to find you over here though.
It's okay, I think it actually puts it out on both feeds, so it's fine. But I was just chatting and saying how about half an hour ago you were like, should we do a trial run? I was like, no, it's fine.
I know.
Sorry, everybody.
Oh my god, I can read everybody's comments as well. It's really disconcerting. So I just said I've got big teeth. Thanks.
It tells you when everybody joins, and then when people comment, we just have to read really quickly and try and catch the comments.
Okay.
Add some fun of it.
Nice. How are you? Are you good?
Thank you everybody for sticking with me, and yeah, we've done it. Some people, yeah, everybody's just saying hello. Thank you so much, Emma, for taking some time out of your evening to talk to me. I wondered if you wanted to just start. I'm going to put my light on because I thought I could do it without a light on, but it's already dark. Do you want to just start by introducing yourself while I turn my light on?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. I'm Emma. Hi Emily. Sorry, I could see people's names popping up that I recognise. Yeah, I'm Emma from Steel and Stitch, that you probably know. I've been a professional crochet designer now for nearly, oh my god, it's definitely 3 years, maybe a bit more, and that meant that I was doing nothing else at all. Hi Fiona. Sorry. My husband's just put my boys to bed. I've got 2 of those. They are 10 and 7. And I started crocheting actually to make them stuff when they were babies. I learnt on YouTube when I was on maternity leave with my youngest one about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, really. And that's how my journey sort of began. But it's been a very sort of convoluted one. I've done a lot of stuff up to this point.
That's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask, when did you start crocheting and when did you join Instagram with crochet, and were they at the same time, or did Instagram come later?
They've grown together, so they weren't at the same time. I'd written my first book, and which was it was stuff I'd made for my boys. It was all dress-up stuff. So it was quite unusual, and I never expected to get a book deal or anything in a million years. That seemed bonkers. But I got the first one, and then they asked for another one, so I made a second book with them. But I was still working full-time in urban planning in local government. Yeah, which I did for ages. And by the time the second book came out, I was sort of juggling. The boys were still only 2 and 4, and I was just really struggling to get everything in. And I thought, right, if I'm ever going to have a go at crochet professionally, I've got 2 books now. This is the time to have a go. So I really terrifyingly handed in my notice in my nicely paid, very comfortable local government job. To see if it would work, and all of a sudden I had the time to pick up Instagram, and I didn't know what it was for before that point. I didn't get it at all. I didn't understand hashtagging or any of those things. And having the time to sit with it, and just, it wasn't even a conscious decision to make a thing on Instagram. I was just looking for people, for friends that had a
Sure.
similar interest to me, and I didn't know other people crocheted at all. I'd
Mm.
never met anybody that did, and all of a sudden there were all these people there that, you know, were sharing stuff that they'd made, and it was such a genuine kind of love affair with just finding people that would get really excited with you about
Found
stuff
your
you like.
tribe.
Very much so. So then it kind of started to grow together, and because of Instagram, I then started to get all sorts of other offers of work with all sorts of amazing people, and that's where I mean, I would be nothing without Instagram at all. Okay, they were the books, but I don't feel like they counted in any way as much as the kind of the work and the people I've met through
Sure.
Instagram. So it's been quite, I feel like that journey has gone together, and I wouldn't be where I was without it at all.
It's quite interesting because I've got a couple of similarities. I'm going to turn my lamp on, honestly. I've got a couple of similarities. That's just not helped, has it? I feel like I'm in like absolute darkness. Sorry, everybody. I learned to crochet when my youngest was also when I was on maternity leave, and yeah, got into it, and then kind of found, for me, I sort of found Instagram at the same time, and then realised that, yeah, there were loads of other people doing it, and people with massive followings. I was like, oh, actually, maybe this is quite a cool thing to do. Not that I should have needed that validation, but yeah, you just find like-minded people, don't you? And you find your tribe.
I think I had the same, such a surprise, just that there were those other people. And I think the stuff I was making, the reason I started writing patterns, one is because, and this is a real confession, I have never followed a pattern in my life. I can't. I don't get much pleasure out of that, because I get frustrated and stuck, and so really, really quickly I just started writing my own patterns. Sure. And it was partly because I wanted to make stuff for my boys that was quite cool. And when I started, it was at that turning point, I think. Crochet went from still slightly granny to quite cool over the last few years. It's had that flip, and I think I was looking at that very beginning part before I could find cool patterns. So I kind of learned amigurumi. That was my introduction. And I was making kind of Mario Kart stuff. That kind of thing for my boys. And it was wanting to do cool things. And then Instagram showed me this whole world of like amazing cool stuff that people were doing. And I was just like, oh my God, people do it too. And just, you
suddenly realise what else is out there, or other things that you can make. Yeah. Absolutely. And I suppose as well, perfect timing in terms of, I mean, like you said, 4 or 5 years ago, I think crochet was only really, again, just beginning to get picked up as popularly as it is. And I still find that you can find loads and loads of amazing knit patterns from sort of big yarn companies and pattern makers. But I tend to find that the most interesting crochet patterns that I come across are people who have self-published them. So again, I suppose it really tied in with that point in which other people were able to use Instagram and Etsy and do PDF downloads, and it all kind of worked together. So I think that's really helped crochet as well. It
really has. Mine started with Etsy. That was how my husband taught me into. I'd made a little skull and crossbones, a plique patch we have a thing near where we live called Pirate Day. And they do this competition it's a seaside town, and they hold the record for most people dressed as a pirate.
Amazing.
And so we were all kind of getting dressed up in our going to be part of the Pirate Day thing. And Harris was tiny, and I made him this little woolly applique skull and crossbones.
Oh.
To put on his baby grow. My husband was saying, you should put it on Etsy, you should put it on Etsy. And I just thought no one in their right mind would ever pay for a pattern. Having never followed one, I didn't really understand that either. And I put it on Etsy, and I think I was selling 3 patterns every day of the same one.
That's amazing.
For weeks. And I was suddenly like, oh my God. And that was the thing. It was that kind of ability to, because I think with Etsy, you can control it, and you can take it down or put it up, or, you know, manipulate it. And people would give you feedback all the time. I'd tell people to email me because I had no idea it turns out I make up stitches, which I didn't know. I have tech editors calling me in tears going, this doesn't exist. I'm just like, I'm really sorry.
I mean, it's a skill, but I imagine it might be confusing for some people.
Very much so, very much so. Because, you know, there is a standard form, isn't there? And if you don't, if you're trying to share it with other people, you need to be able to sort of
But I mean,
work
it's
to that.
confusing enough already just having the different UK and US terms, isn't it?
And I learned in a US terminology from a Texan woman on YouTube. So in my head, I'm going yarn over whenever I'm kind of doing those things. I've got like this Texan narrative in my head, and I had to learn how to write in English. And there's a lovely lady called Claire Montgomery who's the commissioning editor for Inside Crochet, and she's really phenomenal. And it was her that said she really helped me learn UK terminology. She's like, you've got to do
funny
this.
Because Claire was also the person who really helped me get into craft publishing, because I was actually I was working in books but non-fiction, not craft, and I think I put something on my feed one day and she just really kindly messaged me and said, oh, if you want any pointers or help in kind of moving across into craft, and let me know. So she's obviously just reaching out to everybody and helping everyone.
So generous. I think, but that's what I've found about the crochet community is there's very little trolling or unpleasantness, or I mean maybe a tiny bit every now and then, but actually it's a really generous community, and everyone's really, I mean, when people ask, with different people asking for if I know any crochet designers, I will tell them everybody I can possibly think of. You know, you're just really free to put people in contact with other people, because that's the way it's got to work, isn't it? You know, you kind of share those skills, and it feels like the right way to do it. But
people
crochet seems
building each other up.
Absolutely.
So I was going to ask actually if you had any tips or kind of pointers. I'm sure there are people watching who would like to get into designing or getting published. What would be your main recommendations? I mean, obviously you said you didn't actually have Instagram when you got your book deal. So did people find you through your blog?
Yeah, so that was a really important I don't know if you know Lobster and Swan. She's an interiors blogger.
I'm not
sure.
She
had a monstrous following. We grew up together. I married her first boyfriend, in fact.
Okay.
we were really close for ages. And she's now got an amazing shop called The Future Kept. She does all sorts of, I mean, her business has really grown through just this sort of online presence. And we were chatting one day and she said, you've got to work out how to do a blog. And she kind of gave me this crash course in what to do. And again, it was a medium I didn't really understand, but I just started putting stuff I'd made up on there. When the boys were little, I made them a set of octonauts, amigurumis, and put the patterns for free up on my blog. And what happened was I was able to go to my publisher with it. When you go on the blog stats, it tells you how many people downloaded the pattern. And some of my patterns, my little amis and stuff, were being shared on big crochet hosting sites. And I was able to go to them and say, look, I know 40,000 people have downloaded this one little crab pattern, for example. And it gave them such a sense of confidence in my abilities, or at least in the fact that people wanted to make some of the stuff I was designing.
Sure.
But it really, really helped in them saying, you know, let's put a book together. And I think the other thing is I have this ridiculous ability to email anybody without, I don't worry about it. Like, I just think, what is the worst that's going to happen?
Sure.
Literally nothing. No one is going to email me back. So when I first kind of quit the job, I was just like, right, I would find people on Instagram I liked, or just magazines, and go, hi, I've never done this before.
I'm here.
And I would send some pictures. Like, there's a real value in putting together like a little, I suppose, like a press sheet, like a who you are and stuff you've made.
Sure.
And just whizzing it off and going, being really honest. I mean, having worked in local government for such a long time, I felt like a fraud almost the entire time. You have to watch your language and so many things. But when I went freelance, I was like, I am just going to be as much me as possible. And if people don't want to work with me, then actually we're starting off on a really solid ground, because I don't have to fake anything. So
That's such a good policy, though, isn't it, really? I mean, it would be nice, I suppose, if everybody could be like that in their jobs. But I suppose I appreciate you're saying the kind of industry you came from. It's not quite as easy to just be yourself.
No, you really can't. You have to be, or you just have to be very careful, which is fine. So I just would have these really kind of very personable emails going, hi, I'm Emma. This is me. This is what I do. I don't know if you like this stuff. I don't care if you don't. If you do, let's work together. And actually, I think everybody got back to me and was like, brilliant. Let's see what we can do. And if you put a design together that someone doesn't like, then they'll just tell you that it's not for them. And I've had to learn that process of how to present a design, because going from having a woolly idea in my head to, you know, this is a concept has been quite a journey, and I've had to find a path and a way of doing it. That's taken a while.
Sure. And I suppose as well, being prepared for them to be like, well, we like this, but actually could you change the yarn and the colour and the weight and everything else?
Absolutely. And I spend more time now designing things that maybe I wouldn't design for myself, but people, so different magazines have different colour palettes and different stylings for different seasons, and they might say, right, this month we want, if you sign, so this is for anyone watching that is thinking about doing this, if you get in touch with any of the crochet magazines thinking you want to do design, and they will put you on a mailing list, and they will send out a list of inspiration boards and themes for the next few months coming, and you can get some designs together, just some sketches, as long as you've got an idea of what stitches you might use and what sorts of weights of yarn you might want to use and how it go together, and send that in, and they'll decide whether they want to include yours in their magazine or not. And for the most part, quite a prescriptive colour palette they want to use for that time, and quite a lot of specific themes. So you'll tend to work to what they want as opposed to what you want.
Sure.
And actually, it's the same when you write a book. What's weird about writing a book, especially with a proper publisher, is you don't get any say over what it's going to look like, what's going to be in it necessarily, what the styling is. You have to let go really early on. Yeah. That kind of aesthetic, and that's really hard. Really. Yeah.
It's quite interesting for me on the other side of it as well, because obviously, yeah, I understand that process, but also I'm normally the person saying, no, that colour's not going to work, we need it in this colour. But what you said about putting yourself out there and just emailing people with a couple of pictures and things as well, I mean, you wouldn't believe the amount of people who will email into us at our magazine and not include any pictures or any links to their online work. And then it's really hard to know, because I mean, okay, I could maybe try and find their name and search for them on the internet, but then if they're not actually under that name on the internet, I'm kind of got no idea who I'm working with or what kind of thing they do or what style they do, or if they're into amigurumi or garments. So I think your idea of putting together maybe just like a PDF page with also a few of your designs and things is a really good idea.
You've got to give people a taste, haven't you? I don't have a website. I haven't got the technical skills to build a website, but I've got a blog, and you can really easily change that to fit your aesthetic if you spend a little bit of time. And that's it. I kind of use it not quite like an online portfolio, but just all the pictures I put on Instagram, I tend to put on there as well. And it's just like a base for people. And if I'm emailing anyone, I can't send them all the pictures of stuff I've ever made, but I can say, go and have a look here, and they can scoot through and get a fairly quick understanding of. And it's the thing about being really consistent with your style or your brand, or whatever you want to call it, across all the platforms that you're using. Which for me in the beginning was really chaotic, and it would be pictures of my house and my cat and my boys and all those things. And then I kind of thought, okay, I need to bring this down and think about not how I want to show myself to the world, but my whitey white background thing started because I live in a house covered in Lego and pants. I have two boys. We look like we have been burgled all of the time.
Not so Instagrammable.
Really not. Bye, Fiona. Sorry. And I was like, right, what can I do? And I just had a plain canvas. And so I started photographing on that canvas, because it was like, right, because I've got quite a clean, I like to be quite focused on one thing at a time. And it just worked for me. And I was like, right, if this is the thing I do, I don't have to make the same stuff all the time to get some sort of consistency. I can make different stuff. I can just present it in this sort of consistent style, and then it gives me the freedom to play around. And that went to my blog, and that stayed on my Instagram. And actually now it's quite a sensible, cohesive thing. Which is much easier to talk to. If you want to talk to magazines or publishers or anything, it just helps them get a really solid idea of who you are.
Definitely. It slightly ties into, I don't know if you caught my chat with Christina from Tiny Curl, but she was talking as well about her Instagram and trying to keep it very kind of on brand and the same thing. And she kind of asked, from our point of view, from a sort of publishing point of view, is that helpful? And it's really helpful because you get an instant flavour for the type of thing that you're going to get, or, you know, broadly. Somebody's just commented and said, how do you find the balance between, you know, giving the publisher, the magazine or the book what they want, but also keeping your own sense of style? But I think by the time that somebody said that they want to work with you, hopefully they've already got a feel for your style and broadly what they're going to get, but it just needs tweaking then. Would you agree? Or have you ever had an instance where you've been forced into doing something that's really outside your comfort zone?
Oh, I had to make a hat for someone once, and I just thought, I'm never going to wear this. Like, that wouldn't necessarily be for me. But I think what you've got to, it's about having the confidence in yourself as a designer, actually, and saying, whatever I make is going to be my style, whether it's something that would necessarily be very me or not. So I made a lovely sample scarf for Molly Makes recently, and it's in a colour palette. Molly Makes tends to have a slightly more subtle colour palette than I love a neon, like I love a neon. And it's so sometimes you might change things like that, but actually the way I would put it together would still be kind of intrinsic to who I am and the things I like as a designer. So they're the bits that still come through, I think. I mean, there are certain people you work for. So I ended up working with like a crochet monthly installment like pack. I'm not going to say the name. But that was like a year long. Every month they would release a book, and you put it in a big folder, and they were really, really prescriptive about what they wanted, and to the point of sending you a picture of the thing they want you to make. So for someone like that, you are literally just churning out these very specific things. But actually, they don't have my name on. You know, that's when you become a designer in a different. You're not an indie designer anymore when you're doing that. You're designing for a very specific company with a very, very specific idea of what they're working to. And so that's where that flips around, and actually I was okay with that because it wasn't my name on it. If it's something that's going to have my name on it, I feel like it does need to still be something that means something to me, is, you know, much more personal to me. So that's where you start to find that balance, I think.
And I somebody wanted to know what your kind of source of inspiration was, and I wanted to kind of turn that into a slightly longer question, because I think when I first came across you on Instagram, you were doing a really beautiful series of almost like sort of colour swatches inspired by nature and local blooms. They're so beautiful, they're almost like a book in themselves. But then, like you said, your style is quite I want to say geographic, but that's not what I mean, like geo and neon. So
it's quite graphic.
So is it the kind of colours that are inspired by nature, but then shape wise, you know, it's not so much pretty florals, or do you just kind of go with whatever mood's taking you at the time?
The florals is really important to me, actually, and it's why I kind of moved into doing sustainable design.
I'm not going anywhere, keep talking.
That's all right. Starting to collect, the first couple of books were just things out of my head, and that was brilliant. And I get a lot of inspiration from movies, and this morning I was watching Quantum Leap. I don't know if anybody remembers Quantum Leap. I downloaded the first series to my computer this morning, and they've got such amazing 80s clothes in it, and you kind of, my brain starts going ping, ping, ping. Oh my God, I'm totally going to make this. And so I get inspiration that way. I get it from the people around me a lot. They're like my muses, like my best friends and my children and my sisters.
Oh, that's so nice.
I'm going to make something for them. Like, that will kind of click. But with colours and stuff, I've got to a point where I realised after the first book, everything was in the same sort of tones and colours. And I thought, I really need to move myself on and find different ways of. And I live in a really beautiful part of Sussex, just at the foot of the South Downs, and we're just surrounded by woodland. And because I had just gone freelance and had all this time, I was sort of walking and just walking is a really good way for me to get ideas. It's sort of, the brain is doing stuff while the legs are doing stuff, and it just kind of goes together. But the hedgerows and all the flowers around me were so beautiful that I just started bringing them home. And then I'm really lucky to have a vast amount of wool in my house. And just, I mean, the colour swatches were just a way of like, I was photographing the flowers to try and keep the colours
Sure.
references. And then actually putting them to swatches meant that I had this kind of really direct thing to use. And then we did the Crochet Girl Gang blanket cal, and it was just all of a sudden this beautiful collection of sort of inspiration right there. And that was very geometric. And I mean, I went with like quite dark autumn colours for mine, like greys and oranges and yellows. And it was all very geometric again. But actually all those colours are able to come in. And I still refer to all those swatches now. I haven't had time to make them for ages, and it's something I really miss. But I've got a bank of them, and it's like having a library in my house.
So useful,
of like colour. Really, really useful. And they're really personal to me because, as I say, I live on the South Downs, and there's a particular colour palette that sits up there. And we've got really pebbly beaches where I live, which are all quite muted greys and browns and blues. And that sits with me, and they tell stories to me, even if they're coming out in these like geometric forms.
That's really interesting.
But
I think that's quite a good tip for people as well. If you're unsure of colours, or you find yourself stuck in a rut, maybe if you see like a postcard even, or some flowers, and the colours are really inspiring, I suppose there and then, if you almost wrap some yarn around the card and kept it as a library like you do, that's such a good idea for a reference then.
And I have to, the lovely Yarn and Blarney, hi, just messaged me to talk about, mention my floral crown. And one of my other favourite, there's this, I think it's called red_rooster. They are an Instagram site of it's Polish, traditional Polish wedding headdresses.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God, they are so cool. And they are like crowns of pom-poms with flowers and ribbons pouring off them. And they are so amazing.
Oh, I definitely need to check that out.
And it's that kind of, I love that kind of traditional sort of quite folk art, and those really, I've got loads of sewing books and hand stitching books and all those kind of designs that you get from that really traditional folk art. Actually, I love that kind of graphic simplicity of that. So when I built my first crown, it was absolutely, funny enough, those flowers in that crown were made from the azalea bushes that line the drive that come up to our house.
Oh, wow.
So it's all taken from where I live.
All gets pulled in together.
And sometimes it's mental, and sometimes it's quite, no, it's never very calm. I want it to be Scandi and beautiful. Like in my head, I can live in this beautiful Scandi world, but in reality, I'm in like...
Oh my goodness. In my head, especially with my house, I'm like, I want to be so Scandi and minimalist, and then I look round and I'm like, oh no, wait, this is maximalism. Like, I'm doing it in between what I wanted to happen and what actually came out. But there we go.
I love the idea of that pared back, but I'm in the world's tiniest office. I had a craft room downstairs. We are in the process of turning it into a second bedroom for my oldest son.
Okay.
It has had the wool in it for the last few years, so we've made a tiny little den up here in our bedroom. But I have just got flowers dripping off stuff and pom-poms dripping off stuff, and I can't help but kind of live in this cave of like decorative nonsense. And I was going to say, in my designs, I don't tend to design stuff that's just decorative. I tend to design things that are useful. Sure. So clothes or baskets, and I'm in my head, I'm like, no, I'm really utility, and that kind of is it William Morris, only have things in your home that you find to be beautiful or find to be useful? That kind of...
That's it, yeah, the function and the form, yeah.
Exactly, but clearly making a floral crown has no use whatsoever.
I don't know. Like I said when I made mine the other week, though, I think you can just wear it to do the washing up. Like, I don't think it has to be a big deal. Just, if it makes you happy, just go for it.
I wear mine to parties, like Christmas parties. I made this huge one for our staff Christmas party. Just because I love it. I just love it.
Amazing. So before you got into crochet, were you doing other crafts, or were you very creative as a child, or was it something that you kind of came to more as an adult?
No, my parents divorced when we were really tiny. I've got an identical twin, by the way.
Oh, wow.
And she and I do a lot of stuff. I've always made loads of stuff together. And my mum left, and it was just us and my dad. And he's a really practical man, so he taught us to do. I would learn to do marquetry that's like wood inlay stuff by the time I was about 9. And he was really good at drawing and carving, and like we were taught to saw stuff, like
Brilliant.
woodwork, at quite a young age. And then we first started making each other clothes for our birthday when we were about 8.
Oh,
From the
that's so
curtains,
sweet.
really dreadful clothes from
Were
our
they
awful
wearable?
curtains. No, God, no. I made her like a Ming the Merciless style dressing gown with a huge collar. But we'd always been very sort of drawn to, I suppose, that kind of activity.
Hands-on,
And then
yeah.
I think so. And actually mine was fabric for years. I did lots of sewing and stitching for a really long time. And my mum taught me to knit, but I was really horrible at it. And I kept finding myself going into, it would be in fabric shops, but going and touching the balls of yarn and thinking, oh, I really want to take these home. And then I just suddenly thought, why do I not know how to crochet? And was just like, fine, I'm going to find out. And just took to it. Because with knitting, it was all the dropping stitches, and you know, you're having to concentrate.
I feel the fear with knitting. Like it stresses me out that every stitch is active, because I'm like, what if I lose one? I'm not skilled enough to know how to like recognize what's happened. No, I find it too stressful.
Not at all. And then exactly with crochet, you've finished every stitch if you've done it. And for me, because of the way I design, I make something. If it looks wrong, I pull it apart.
Yeah.
And which you can't do with knitting at all. And I think that was one of the reasons I never got on with it. Not being a pattern follower, it didn't work for me because I couldn't make mistakes. I spend more time making mistakes and ripping stuff back, even now, than I do doing it right.
Do you find that with sewing a little bit as well, though? Because my mum is very into patchwork. She has a patchwork and quilting shop. So I have done bits and bobs, and I went through, just before I found crochet, went through a bit of a kind of refashioning phase where I followed loads of amazing like upcycler refashioner people and tried to do it myself. But my problem is I'm not very good at I don't like to plan. I like to just go straight in and make. And so I'd be like, oh, I'll just take that seam in by a few inches, and then I'd be like, oh no, wait, I can't now wear that. Whereas crochet, I think, is a lot more forgiving, because at least things will stretch a little bit if you get it wrong.
And when you're teaching people, you can just say, you can literally put your hook in any hole and you'll make a stitch around it. It's like, you can't see when you've made a mistake. I'm a bit like you. I haven't got the patience to sit and plan. Like I would do this sort of thing. This is my hand stitched stormtrooper.
That's amazing.
It's just made out of spare wool.
That is so good.
I just don't have I think my thing is I don't have a fear, so I just cut the neck off it. It had a hole in. It was my husband's nan's jumper. She was going to throw it away, and I was like, no. And just, I'm not afraid, because actually I just think, what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to ruin a jumper, like, that someone was going to throw away. So I tend to buy my clothes, in fact, from second-hand shops, so that I'm not afraid I can do what I want to them. I do buy nice stuff sometimes, obviously, but I wouldn't dare sort of interfere with that. So I'm very aware that I'm getting really dark, but
it's I am as well. I feel like I'm just sat with a light behind me rather than in front of me.
So I actively go towards fiddling with my clothes anyway. So crochet was like another. What I like doing is getting something existing. So I got a really beautiful ball of Noro garden silk yarn, which is really expensive. I couldn't afford more than one. But I made a new yoke and cut the bottom off a t-shirt and just attached this new beautiful yoke to this old t-shirt bottom, and it makes me feel like I've made that thing. It gives me an excuse to buy single skeins of really beautiful yarn that I couldn't afford to do anything else with. And then I've got something that I'm not too impatient to finish, because making a whole jumper just, you're like that, oh God.
I think it's quite an interesting challenge as well. Like it sparks creativity. Before, obviously I earn more now than I did, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. And so I can afford nice yarns. Also, I'm in a fortunate position now where I quite often get given free yarn by different people and companies I work with. But before that, I used to buy a lot of my yarn from charity shops, just because in the little town that I lived in, there were some great charity shops. and I couldn't resist buying the yarn. But also it was then quite a fun challenge because it was maybe a variegated yarn or a really chunky yarn, or like some ladies, like old ladies 10 balls of mohair that were all matted together and needed unraveling. But I quite enjoyed that as a sort of like, oh, what can I do with it? It sort of sparks different ideas. Whereas
it makes you resourceful, doesn't it? It's that thing, I think that thing about being, someone said to me, I'm not very creative, the other day, and I just think mostly that's nonsense. I think people think that if they can't draw or do something really specific, they don't think they are. But actually, just being resourceful is a really creative exercise in itself, isn't it? And if you, I did exactly the same as you. When I first started, I would go into charity shops and find all these little, I didn't know at the time, I didn't know what a DK was, I didn't know what Aran was, I didn't know what stuff was made from. I would just go and find these little scraps of stuff and start putting it all together and seeing what happened with it. And I think the more you kind of let go of what you think you should be doing and just kind of let whatever happens with the stuff you've got in front of you happen. That was, I was thinking about my inspiration. Quite often I'll have an idea about something and then the wool will turn up and the wool wants to be something else. And a lot of the time it's about the material you've got as to what you end up making. Because you can think of something and it just doesn't work for that at all. And you just have to sort of let it be whatever it wants to be. I don't mean that in like a mystic way. Just
I totally get you. And I think as well, this probably leads us quite nicely into talking about your masters that you're doing at the moment and your sustainable design. Is that the title? Did you want to talk a little bit about that? And maybe I was going to ask you if your kind of attitude towards using yarns or choosing yarns had changed since before doing it and now, or it might not have done. I don't want to lead you in the wrong direction, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about that, because I'm really interested to know about that.
It's quite an odd journey, because I'd worked in local government for a long time. That was out of a desire to, I really believe in expending your energy to kind of do the greatest good you can for the people around you. I just think that's sort of how we should live. And that's why I worked in local government. Most people hate you doing that and just want to shout you about their bins, but everybody there, I would like to say, is doing it for the greater good. So when I went and was just doing crochet, I was loving it and able to sit there with a box set, Quantum Leap, for example, and just kind of me and the wool. But I kind of felt, and I had my lovely community on Instagram, but it got to a point where I was thinking, I'm really in a really privileged position, actually, and I'm just so thankful for the place I'm in. And I write columns really regularly for Simply Crochet and get invited to go and talk at things and teach at things all the time. And I just thought, what am I using this for?
You've got a voice in the community.
Exactly. And not necessarily a big one, but, a voice of a sort. And I just thought I should be doing something more with this. And I didn't know what to do. And I kept trying to work it out. And I sort of put together Mrs. Steele's School of Stitchcraft and Scissory because I sort of wanted
and you had there was a Make It Better social club as well. Was that a similar thing?
This is a real lesson. So what happened with the Make It Better social club is Instagram crashed and lost the account, and I had I had never made any other backup. Like I had no blog and no means of contacting those people in it, and it was a real kind of shock to the system. Like, oh my god, I have. You
just don't expect it to happen in this day and age.
No, it just was like, nope, all gone, literally all gone. And so I kind of scrabbled together Mrs. Steele's and thought, hang on, before you charge ahead with this, really work out what it's for and why you're doing it and how best to use it, because lots of people were getting really interested really quickly. And I thought, oh my god, I don't just want to roll off and not make the most of this, because what I really wanted to do was find a way to put together a platform for everybody to share ideas. I don't want it to be about me. It's not about me. There's so many people out there with these amazing skills and abilities, and crochet and knitting and sewing and all those sorts of crafts give us a certain amount of resilience. If we can understand where stuff comes from, how hard it is to make something. Like if you go to Primark and buy a jumper for £2, I mean, brilliant, cheap jumper, amazing. You couldn't make it for that. And I think in learning how to make something, you start to really value things in a different way.
Yeah, and I think actually there are people who still don't realise that crochet can't be machine made. So if you see crochet garments in the shops, they have been made by someone somewhere, because unlike knitting, there is no machinable crochet. And I think we talked about right at the start what a kind of resurgence crochet has had and how popular it is, and I think that definitely has happened amongst the craft community, but also you can really see it like in the spring summer ranges on the high street this year. There is crochet everywhere, like crochet bags, crochet jumpers, and some places are selling them at high prices, which you feel like, okay, that probably reflects the workmanship. But then there are other places, you know, probably your Primarks and Matalands, and it's really cheap, like £5 for a bag, made knit crochet bag, and you just think, what child in what place has made that bag? So it's quite bittersweet because it's so nice to see crochet celebrated and it be such a like popular thing when you're passionate about it, but it's sort of at what cost, isn't it?
Well, this is what I mean, I kind of went into this MA thinking, oh, you know, I'm going to do crafty stuff, and I really thought I was going to take forward the Mrs. Steele's thing. I just wanted some direction and some sort of mentorship, and I thought, well, these are the people that will know how to help me do it. And actually the things I've been learning instead about fast fashion, and I've learned a lot of really hideous traumatic things, which are quite, I thought, oh my God, you know, and it's trying to find a way forward and through it. And what's been really interesting is, so things like crochet going on the high streets and stuff, I think it's that double-edged sword, isn't it? You want people to want to emulate that because then they'll learn, but you don't want people to try it. Actually, you've got to start. So we've been learning about circular economies and linear economies, and I kind of don't want to get bogged down with that. I don't think most people want to get bogged down with it. I think actually if we could just kind of keep it on a, look, we love making stuff. There's a whole world of people out there that love making stuff, and in so doing, you're already playing a part in kind of
if people are really passionate about making clothes, whether it's sewing or crochet or knitting, you almost don't need to sell slow fashion to those people because they're already living it and breathing it. But I think you're right, and it's hard when people will sometimes switch off, won't they, if they feel like something's being forced on them, or not that they're being preached to, because I don't feel that that's even what you're doing at all. I think you put things across in a really positive way, but people, I don't know if it's a human nature thing or what, but yeah, people will almost shut it down, won't they, if they feel like it's too, which is a shame, but it's finding a way to, like you said, incorporate it into what we love.
I mean, I've been reading loads of really full-on books and actually learning about why we do that. So I'm trying to find out why people do shut off, which I have done. It's a protective mechanism. It's like a defense mechanism. We just go, yeah, can't deal with. So I learned recently that boredom isn't, what it actually is the brain being given information that it doesn't know what to do with.
Okay.
It's got nowhere to put it, so it just goes, I'm not doing that. And actually that's kind of where most of us have got to, I think, with when people shout sustainability at us, because you're like, okay, everything's really bad, but what can we do? And so it's kind of going, I'm not necessarily interested in talking about sustainability, actually. I'm more interested in just saying to people, what can we do? Like, we can make stuff and build stuff and grow stuff, and just kind of actually connecting with each other and building communities where we want to engage and just share ways of doing things that maybe we didn't think of. I think that's enough. My tutor might argue with me about that, but in response to your question, I've read a book called Slow Clothing by a woman called Jane Milliburn, who's also on Instagram. And I mean, she was talking about how actually if you use acrylic yarn, it's plastic and it will go into the sea. And I was just like, but I've got the whole collection of paint box acrylics and I love them. Like, I've got every colour. I'm really happy. So I don't know if I'm necessarily going to change those things about how I work, because I think, I know I should. God, I know I should. But there's also that practical element. Like, if you start working out all the things you should do, like, I leave my lights on around my bed because they're fairy lights and they're pretty. I know I shouldn't do it. I know it's a waste of energy, but actually, for me, I think it's more empowering to think about the things I do. And I think what I'm researching at the moment is ways of having that conversation with people about the stuff they do, as opposed to all the things we should be doing and can't manage.
Because again, I imagine there's a lot of emotion tied into when you feel like it's a negative thing before you've even started, then it's self-defeatist, isn't it? And where do you go from there? So that's interesting.
Absolutely. But what's also really interesting is since I started doing a master's, I've now been invited to lecture so I've lectured at Brighton on their fashion communication course. I'm going to lecture at Kingston and I just went and worked with King's College, and actually I'm lecturing in social media for creative industries
Oh,
and visual
wow.
communication, and that's purely based on Instagram, my knowledge and understanding of Instagram, and because I did a little survey recently. It was a little film where I just asked people to show me how they make stuff.
Yeah.
It was a really simple A, B, or C, which sort of make or you. And my tutor said he'd never had anyone have so many survey responses from anything they had done.
Oh, wow. Because you had that kind of ready-made community.
Because there's a community, and I've worked out a way of asking people stuff that gave me useful information. So
well, also, I mean, I imagine you could do a lot of it just through Instagram polls, because people love an Instagram poll.
it's working out how to ask somebody something in a useful way that they want to talk about, and all those things. And most of my tutors have never left uni, or they've been there a long time, and they're not. The reason I'm going to lecture to the other people on my course about how to use Instagram and stuff, because the teachers, they don't know how to use it. They don't know.
That's fast. Yeah. Well, I suppose that makes sense, doesn't it? And, I mean, like, even we said at the start how quickly things have changed in the last 5 years, or, I mean, what was it, like 2010 when Twitter was invented, and that was the kind of first of the big social media sort of powerhouses in a way. Yeah, and that's quite a short lifespan, really. I mean, it's one of the reasons I kind of wanted to try the Instagram lives out, just because I thought, I mean, I know it's not that new a technology, and the split screen thing, I think, has been happening for a while, but it just struck me that it was quite an immediate and easy way to talk to people. I mean, we can't edit it, and obviously we could probably both improve our lighting, but I just think it's, if you're able to embrace things and try and make them work for you, and enjoy them as you do, then I think that's what technology, like, we should use it to serve us. And obviously you're able to do that for your course, and that's really helpful for others as well.
One of the things that people ask me about is how do you do this? How do you do this? How do you use it? And I keep trying to say to them, it's called social media for a reason. It's literally about making friends with people.
Just talk to people.
Yeah. Actually, for me, this conversation with you is just about getting to know someone else in my community. That's in trying to do my masters. Actually, it was almost the same thing. It's about how do you build a community of people around you that that you can connect with, because we can all sit and talk to our phone. We can all sit and vlog all day long and make your own YouTube channel. And it's just you. That's you talking to yourself.
Yeah.
And I find that I mean, lots of it's really informative, but for the most part, it's quite it's a bit ego massaging in a way.
I know what you mean.
Not for anyone, I'm not trying to be
No. Well, because I do a podcast as well, and I do enjoy it, but almost one of the things that I enjoy most is when people leave me comments. And I always say in my videos, like, leave me comments. And I think it probably comes across as if I'm doing it like for algorithm purposes, but actually I just really enjoy that kind of continuing the conversation. But also I listen to loads of podcasts, like kind of creative business and community audio podcasts, and I love those. And I felt a little bit like my podcast, where I was just sitting and talking, was lacking that element, which is why I wanted to try these lives as well, because it's a different kind of conversations that go on in comments versus actually face to face, isn't it?
It's really interesting. Well, having said that, I love listening to a podcast. I'm really not critiquing. I always wonder if it's because I'm a twin. I feel the need to have somebody else to talk to all of the time. But I kind of think, for me, this is what this is about. It really is about kind of connecting with people and talking to people and just sharing stuff. It's just sharing stuff beyond you, I think, is really powerful and
definitely
really nice.
So is that, I was going to ask you what kind of direction you thought Steal and Stitch would take after having done, or obviously you're still doing your masters, or is it still, do you think in a way, like you said, you will maybe just continue doing the bits of designing and sort of writing that you enjoy, and then see where obviously the lecturing and things are going to take you? Or is that too big a question? Don't feel you have to answer.
No, I mean, it was a big question. My sister, so the identical twin, she is a lecturer and she lectures in fashion marketing. And I spent the last 2 years going, you've got a brand, you should be selling stuff. And me going, I don't want to put more crap in the world. Like, I don't want to turn it into this other buy my stuff. I mean, that again, that's not, it's just not where I'm coming from. And so I've been thinking about it, and someone really beautifully put a comment on when you said we were going to chat, said, I want to be in that army about, and I was thinking, oh
Yeah.
my God, I would love the idea of just building this craft army and kind of just using Still and Stitch as just as a platform. It gives me a platform to talk to people and get people involved in stuff. And I would really love to set up some sort of space, if it's an online space or a human space or whatever, to get
Yeah.
people to share those things and um, find a way to just pool our knowledge and learn other easy ways of making our lives kind of better and, yes, more sustainable and more kind of, I suppose, healthy and wholesome and all the things that go with that in a way. But
Definitely. I think as well, I would probably add to that, and a few people are commenting about my podcast, but just that kind of feeling genuine and feeling that actually there's a space where you're not necessarily being sold to, but you can still learn about things or talk about things, and it's just that kind of that authenticity of those connections in the conversation.
yeah,
I think it's just something everybody seems to be craving, especially with social media and Instagram, which I'm sure we all love, but you do increasingly feel like when I don't know now when I'm being sold to or when I'm not, or when somebody's being genuine or when they're just doing it. And I totally get it, and I support, you know, people are trying to make money out of what they love and what they do, but I think the lines are increasingly blurred. So I think having a space where you actually feel like you're a community that are just talking genuinely is really important as well.
Absolutely, it's just kind of feeling it's difficult not to use those spaces to sell stuff. But one of the reasons I kind of very freely said when I started my master's is actually I'm not going to be here posting all the time is because I didn't want it to feel like I was just dredging stuff up and was doing it to keep getting all those love, because we're all craving the love hearts. I mean, whether you like it or not, you still want everyone to go and validate you and go, oh my God, that's amazing or whatever. And I thought, I don't want to do that. I do want to keep this authentic and want to be able to post and share stuff that, and I'm in this really weird position that I'm not allowed to share a lot of the stuff I'm designing because magazines ask you not to. So actually I tended to have less things I could show people. So I kind of wanted to start thinking about, I mean, I made a collection of, I was dragged into my son's school because they found out the masters I was doing and asked to help them design 6 different things out of plastic bottles. And so I was like, okay, and made all these different things. And where I can't share crochet at the moment, actually, I love the idea of being able to share other stuff. We make loads of stuff at home. We make stuff all of the time, out of all sorts of crazy things. And actually not just have it for crochet, but just let it be what it will become and have just sharing other ways of making different things. I think that is probably where if I'm thinking about where Still and Stitch goes, maybe it will kind of just become just broader, really. And the lovely Molly makes have asked if I'll go and do a upcycling bag project for handmade hair, which really exciting, like really exciting. So it's just nice to have kind of other platforms for that resourcefulness and creativeness that we were talking about earlier, just finding other ways of doing stuff that I can share with people, which would be really nice.
Definitely. I just forgot to bring my watch up with me, but I think we might get timed out after an hour. Do you know what time it is?
I have got my computer. I've left my computer screen on to try and give me more light. Oh, it's nearly 9 o'clock. It's 3 minutes to 9. I can't believe that.
I was going to ask you what your name meant. I know some people might know, and it is on your blog, but I didn't realise, and when I read it, I thought it was really sweet. So can you tell us what your name means, Still and Stitch?
Yeah, so my husband and I have been together since I was 18, which is now 20 years.
That's the same as my husband and I.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, he's a mechanical engineer and has been since we got together. So he, whenever we talk about what our elements are, he has always been metal and I've always been material. That's our sort of two. And because it was him that really pushed me to start sharing my makes and stuff. I just thought, okay, everything goes through him first. He's really brutal and be like, no, that is rubbish, or no, that one's amazing. So it was really that combination of he's the steel and I'm the stitch, and it's just. And I love a pun as well. Like I have a real soft spot for a dreadful pun, and I kind of love steal their stuff and stitch them up, kind of play on words. That was what my dad first said when he heard it, and it just really pleased me.
I
So
love
my
it.
phone
That's a
is going
great
to run
name.
out. I've got about 15% left
Okay.
on my
Well,
phone.
I've got a few quick fire questions, and then I'll leave you to it. So, I asked everybody who I've talked to so far these questions, and actually everybody's answered in the same way. But anyway, let's see. Are you up with the larks, or are you a night owl?
Larks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is everyone else night owls?
No, actually, everybody else just said that they like to sleep and they went to bed early and like woke up late. And I'm the opposite, so I'm a night owl. And I just started thinking, do I have a problem? Like, and I can't put it down. I just like keep crocheting into the night unless somebody tells me to stop.
No, I am at 6 a.m. I like to get up at 6, get a
Yeah.
cup of tea, and then just go and sit somewhere and watch the sunrise and the dew on the grass and get my wood out.
That sounds
I love it.
amazing.
I love it.
Would you say you're an introvert or an extrovert?
I mean, I'm an extrovert. I love to think that I'm some sort of shy violet. I'm really not. I'm definitely an extrovert.
And if you had to choose between sock yarn or chunky, which way would you go?
I'm lazy, so chunky, but I
Yeah.
love the idea that I could make something beautiful and lacy with sock. But chunky every time.
And this is probably obvious, but would you say you're more into neutrals or colour?
Colour.
Awesome. That is all of the things I've written down. I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much. It was really easy to talk to you and just, yeah, so nice to get to know you a bit better. Thank you very much for coming and joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's been a real privilege. I met the really lovely Emily from Makey the other day. I don't know if she's still there.
Yeah.
And she chats like I do. We're both quite quick, fast talkers. And I think I could have sat with her for hours and would never have got away.
I specifically chose Emily as my first creative conversation guest because I knew that if I froze and just kind of lost it, she'd just be able to keep talking. So I was like, that's okay.
Keep going. Yeah, we were quite bad together, but I could just do it forever. I love it.
So
thanks so much, and thanks for all the amazing kind of comments that have been coming up through here.
Oh, she's here. Hi, Emily.
Hi, Emily. There's so many. It's amazing.
When you hit end, it will give you the option to share it in your stories, and if you've got space, it will give you the option to save it as well. So, but you should be able to share it even if you haven't got space to save it, if that makes sense.
I've never done a live story. I've never shared anything in my stories. Having said that, I'm some sort of Instagram queen and lecturing to people. Never shared a story.
There you go. It'll be a treat for everybody.
I'll do it now.
Awesome. Thank you everybody for watching. And if you have any questions that we've missed or something, maybe drop either of us a message and we can try and answer them in the comments.
Really happy, really happy to talk to everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emma.
Thank you. Okay, bye.